Welcome to Aging in Recovery. I'm Gil Singh Trong, licensed master social worker and founder of Never Alone Home Care Services Incorporated. Yesterday, a group of us went to visit a friend of ours in a physical rehab center. A man I have known for many years, who, like me, is aging in recovery. Unlike the stereotype society holds about addiction, he is not a person whose life fell apart. He is not a person who spent his life going from institution to institution. He is not what people imagine when they hear the word addict. He built a successful life. He worked for many years in a high-profile position with the city of New York, and he retired honorably. He stayed clean for decades and remained physically active. In fact, he belongs to a cycling club and regularly rides long distances. By every measure, he was doing well. Then one day, a couple of weeks ago, he had a mild stroke. A week or two later, a more severe one. He was alone in his apartment, according to the story he now tells me. He suddenly collapsed to the floor, unable to stand, unable to function normally. He realized he needed help. Somehow, mustering every ounce of strength he had left, he began crawling. He crawled across his apartment floor, crawling toward the door. At some point, he managed to get out. Even now, he can't explain how he accomplished it, but somehow he did. He kept crawling until he made his way to the lobby of the building. Then he waited. He laid there, hoping that someone would come by, praying that someone would find him and realize that he needed help. And fortunately, a neighbor entered the building, saw him lying there, and immediately called for assistance. An ambulance arrived, and my friend's life was saved. 3 weeks later, I visited him with two other longtime friends. We all grew up together in recovery. We all shared decades of that recovery. When we arrived, he was participating in physical therapy. The staff invited us to stay and watch. At one point, the therapist asked me if I would mind helping him to walk. So I stood on one side and the therapist stood on the other. Slowly, step by step, my friend began moving forward. As we slowly helped him walk across the room, the rehab technician and I began talking. Trying to make conversation, he asked me how we all knew each other. Before I could answer, one of my friends called out from across the room, "We all grew up together in Spanish Harlem." The technician smiled. A few minutes later, he mentioned the Knicks and their recent victory. Then almost casually, he looked at me and asked, "So, are you guys going out for drinks to celebrate tonight?" Before I could answer, my friend again yelled out, "We don't drink." The technician looked surprised, genuinely surprised. He looked from one of us to the other. It was obvious he was trying to make sense of what he had just heard. Four older men from Spanish Harlem, lifelong friends, and none of us drink? The more he thought about it, the more curious he became. And he asked a few more questions. We answered politely, but very vaguely. None of us explained that we are in recovery. None of us discussed our history. And none of us felt compelled to talk about addiction. And yet, it was clear he was trying to understand something that did not fit his expectations. This incident made me feel uncomfortable, and I imagined that my friend felt uncomfortable too. He had to live in this rehab facility and depend on them until he got better. Looking back, that brief exchange stayed with me. Not because the technician did anything wrong. He was kind, professional, and genuinely interested. Because it reminded me how invisible recovery is and how prevalent stigma can be. People can see stroke, they can see physical limitations, they can see rehabilitation. What they cannot see is a person aging in recovery, a person with decades of clean time, the friendships, shared experiences, and resilience that people carry with them into old age. Recovery truly is invisible. Watching my friend struggle to walk was very difficult. Not because he was weak, but because I remembered the man who rode bicycles for miles, the man who lived independently, the man who had done everything society asked him to do. A week before his strokes, we had gone shopping. He was looking to get a new shearling coat. Now, as we spent time together, I asked him a question. Do you remember the period when you couldn't speak? He thought for a brief moment. No, he answered. I don't remember anything. Then I asked him another question. What's your biggest fear right now? His answer came quickly. Gil, my biggest fear is that I have difficulty putting sentences together. I have difficulty constructing my thoughts. I listened carefully. The truth was that he seemed to be doing remarkably well. But you seem to be doing okay. He paused. Then he said something I will never forget. Yesterday I was crying because I couldn't talk. And I was so frustrated that I couldn't walk. Then his voice changed. When I woke up today, I had a different view. I was able to think. I was able to talk. And now look at me, I'm beginning to walk. Then he looked around the room at the three of us, and here I am with you guys. As he looked at the three of us, I realized something important. The therapist helping him was skilled. The nurses caring for him were compassionate. The rehabilitation staff themselves were doing everything they could to help him regain his strength and independence. Yet, there was something else happening in that room that no treatment plan could prescribe. The three of us shared a history that stretched back decades. We grew up in recovery together. We struggled together. We witnessed one another's addiction. And we witnessed one another's recovery. We saw each other become husbands, fathers, grandfathers, retirees. Without saying it aloud, we understood the magnitude of what had happened to him. We understood what it means to fight your way back from adversity. We understood what it means to be afraid, what it means to wonder whether life will ever be the same again. Most importantly, he did not have to explain any of that to us. There was no stigma, no judgment. There was no need to hide parts of his story. For a brief moment, he was not simply a stroke patient in a rehabilitation facility. He was our friend, a man we loved, a man we respected, a man who had walked beside us through decades of life and recovery. And now it was our turn to walk beside him. Looking back, I believe that is why he cried. Not because he had lost hope, but because he realized that he was not facing this challenge alone. Recovery had taught us many things over the years, and one of the most important lessons is that nobody should have to struggle by themselves. We're never alone. On that day, in that rehabilitation room, 4 older men aging in recovery were reminded of that lesson once again. At that moment, he began to weep. Not because he was hopeless, not because he was giving up. He cried because we were there. He cried because friendship matters. He cried because love matters, because hope matters. Because after weeks of fear, uncertainty, frustration, and struggle, he was surrounded by people who cared about him. Yeah, he was grateful for the visits and concern of his family. but being surrounded by friends who are also aging in recovery, people who understood where he came from and what he has overcome, people who truly understand what it's like to get here, who are literally walking this journey of aging in recovery alongside him. And as we left that rehabilitation facility, I kept thinking to myself about the many stories like this that exist in the recovery community. My friends and I discussed that just because we are fortunate to be aging in recovery does not make us immune from life. People aging in recovery get strokes, have heart attacks, develop mobility limitations. My friends finally understand why I am so adamant about developing never alone home care services and my concept of an aging in recovery residential model. They realize that many will require home care or need rehabilitation from chronic health issues like stroke or heart attacks. That some of us may eventually need assisted living or require nursing home care. Aging does not bypass us because we got clean. In fact, many people aging in long-term recovery are now living long enough to experience all of the challenges associated with getting older. And that is not a failure. That is a success. The goal of recovery is never simply to stop using, to be abstinent. The goal is to live, to recover. And part of living, part of recovering is having a career, building lasting friendships and relationships, to grow old and to have a future. My friend achieved all those things. And now he faces a very different challenge. Not addiction, but aging. And that is why services for people aging in recovery matter. Not because addiction failed, but because recovery works. Addicts do recover and live to age in that recovery. The man learning to walk again in that rehabilitation facility is not a tragedy. He is a success story. He survived addiction. He built a life, retired. He remained physically active. And now, like millions of other older Americans, he is confronting the realities of aging. The question before us is simple. When people age in recovery, when people live long enough to grow old, who will walk beside them? Will there be recovery-informed care built with compassion, love, and understanding for those of us aging in recovery? That's why I'm building these services. But I can't do it alone. I need your help. Remember, we all get a turn. Thank you for watching Aging in Recovery. If you found this conversation meaningful, please like, subscribe, and follow the channel. And leave your thoughts and comments below. Let's continue the conversation about aging in recovery, the invisible cohort, recovery-informed care, and the future of long-term recovery in America.